The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned streets of Detroit as Marcus Thompson crouched behind the rusted remains of a delivery truck, his weathered hands gripping a makeshift spear crafted from a broken mop handle and a kitchen knife. 3 months had passed since the outbreak began, and the former construction foreman had learned that silence meant survival in this new world where the dead walked among the living. His sharp blue eyes scanned the intersection ahead, counting the shuffling figures that had once been his neighbors, his co-workers, his friends. 12 of them wandered aimlessly between the overturned cars and debris-strewn sidewalks, their torn clothing hanging in tatters, their pale skin mottled with dark veins that pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Marcus had seen enough of these creatures to know their patterns. They moved slower in the morning cold, their joints stiff from the night's chill, but their hunger never diminished, never wavered from the singular purpose that drove them forward in their relentless search for living flesh. Behind him, pressed against the truck's dented bumper, Jessica Rivera clutched her infant daughter Emma to her chest, the baby's soft breathing the only sound that mattered in a world gone silent except for the occasional moan of the undead. Jessica's dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her nurse's training had proven invaluable in keeping their small group healthy during the chaos that had consumed civilization. She had delivered 3 babies in the hospital's emergency room when the first wave of infected patients arrived, their bite wounds festering with a strange infection that turned victim into predator within hours. The memory of watching her colleagues transform before her eyes still haunted her dreams, but it had also taught her the most important lesson of this new existence. In a world where death was contagious, every decision could mean the difference between seeing another sunrise and becoming part of the shambling horde that now outnumbered the living. 2 blocks away, in the abandoned hardware store that had become their temporary sanctuary, David Kim methodically cleaned his hunting rifle while keeping watch through a gap in the boarded windows. The former Marine had returned from overseas deployment just weeks before the outbreak, expecting to find the familiar comfort of home, only to discover that the real war had followed him back to American soil. His military training had kept him alive when others panicked, but it was his childhood spent hunting in the Michigan woods with his grandfather that had taught him patience, the kind of patience required to wait for the perfect moment to strike without alerting every infected creature within a mile radius. David's steady hands moved across the rifle's components with practiced precision, each movement a ritual that connected him to the world that existed before teeth and claws became the primary tools of survival. In the store's back office, 17-year-old Tyler Washington sat hunched over a collection of salvaged electronics, his nimble fingers working to repair a battery-powered radio that might provide their first contact with other survivors in weeks. The high school student's expertise with technology had transformed from a teenage hobby into a critical survival skill, and his ability to jury-rig communications equipment from scavenged parts had already saved their lives twice. Tyler's youthful optimism battled daily with the harsh realities of their situation, but his determination to rebuild some semblance of connection in a disconnected world kept hope alive in the hearts of his older companions. He had lost his parents in the first days of the outbreak when their suburban neighborhood was overrun, but he had found a new family among these strangers who had banded together against impossible odds. The radio crackled to life, and Tyler's excited whisper drew the attention of the others as a voice emerged from the static, clear, human, and broadcasting from somewhere within the city. "This is Captain Rodriguez from the Michigan National Guard, broadcasting on emergency frequency 77.9. We have established a secure perimeter at Belle Isle Park and are accepting civilian refugees. We have medical supplies, food, and clean water. If you can hear this message, make your way to the MacArthur Bridge approach. We will have scouts positioned there daily between 0800 and 1800 hours. Repeat, Belle Isle Park is secure, and we are accepting refugees." Marcus felt his heart pound as he absorbed the implications of the transmission: other survivors, military protection, and most importantly, a real chance at something more than just day-to-day survival. But Belle Isle was 15 miles away through streets crawling with the infected, and they would have to move as a group, protecting Jessica's baby while navigating through the most dangerous urban landscape imaginable. David's tactical mind was already calculating routes and contingencies, while Tyler frantically worked to boost the radio's signal strength, hoping to establish two-way communication with their potential rescuers. Jessica kissed Emma's forehead and whispered a silent prayer, knowing that their decision in the next few minutes would determine whether her daughter grew up in this nightmare world or found sanctuary among the living. As the 4 survivors huddled together in their makeshift fortress, sharing the first real hope they had felt since the world ended, none of them noticed the shadows moving outside their windows, shadows that had learned to hunt in packs, shadows that had retained just enough intelligence from their former lives to set traps for the living, and shadows that had been drawn to their location by the radio's electromagnetic signature, closing in with the patient hunger of predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. The first sign of danger came not from sight but from smell, the sickly sweet odor of decay that had become all too familiar in their new world. David's military-trained nostrils detected it first, his head snapping up from the radio equipment as his fingers instinctively found his rifle. The infected had a distinctive scent, a combination of rotting flesh and something else, something chemical that the virus had introduced into their decomposing bodies. Marcus caught David's alert posture and immediately moved to the front window, peering through a crack in the wooden boards they had hammered across the glass 3 weeks earlier. What he saw made his blood run cold. Not just the random wanderers they had grown accustomed to avoiding, but a coordinated group of infected that moved with disturbing purpose through the early morning shadows. These were different from the mindless shufflers that typically populated the streets. These creatures retained fragments of their former selves, enough cognitive function to use simple tools and remember basic problem-solving skills. Marcus watched in horror as one of them, formerly a police officer based on the torn uniform still clinging to its decaying frame, gestured to the others, directing them to surround the building. The infected officer's movements were deliberate, calculated, and Marcus realized with growing dread that they had been discovered by the most dangerous type of undead, the ones that could still think. Jessica clutched Emma closer to her chest as the baby began to stir, sensing her mother's tension even in sleep. The nurse's medical training had taught her to recognize the stages of the infection, and she knew that victims who retained higher brain function in their transformed state were typically those who had been athletes, soldiers, or individuals with exceptional physical conditioning before their death. These enhanced infected were faster, stronger, and infinitely more dangerous than their deteriorated counterparts. She had seen them hunt in packs during her escape from the hospital, watching in terror as they used teamwork and basic strategy to corner fleeing patients and staff. Tyler's hands trembled as he adjusted the radio's frequency, desperately trying to raise Captain Rodriguez again while keeping the volume low enough to avoid attracting more attention. The teenager had become their lifeline to the outside world, but now his technical skills might be the very thing that had exposed their location to the hunting party outside. He could hear them now, moving around the building's perimeter with the careful coordination of predators who had learned to adapt their hunting techniques to this new environment. The sound of their footsteps was different too, not the random shambling of typical infected, but the measured pace of creatures that understood the concept of stealth. David took position at the rear window, his rifle ready as he watched 2 infected figures examine the back door they had barricaded with a heavy steel shelving unit. One of them, a former construction worker whose hard hat still sat askew on his partially decomposed skull, began methodically testing the barriers, looking for weak points with the patience of someone who remembered how buildings were constructed. The Marine's tactical mind raced through their options, none of which seemed promising. They were outnumbered, surrounded, and trapped in a building with limited exit routes. Worse, they had Emma to protect, and her crying could alert every infected creature within a 6-block radius. The infected officer at the front entrance began scratching at the door with deliberate strokes, creating a rhythmic sound that Marcus recognized as a form of communication. Within minutes, answering scratches echoed from all sides of the building, confirming his worst fears. They were dealing with a pack that had developed its own primitive language. The implications were terrifying, suggesting that the infection was evolving, creating smarter, more dangerous variants that could organize and plan. Marcus had heard rumors from other survivors about such creatures, but seeing them in action was a nightmare beyond anything he had imagined. Jessica's nursing experience had exposed her to the scientific literature about the outbreak in its early days, before the medical community was overwhelmed by the crisis. The virus appeared to affect different individuals in varying ways, with some losing all higher brain function while others retained significant cognitive abilities. The medical term was cognitive variance syndrome, but the survivors had coined simpler names. The mindless ones were shufflers, while the intelligent variants were called hunters. The hunters were exponentially more dangerous, capable of setting ambushes, using weapons, and most terrifyingly, learning from their encounters with the living. Tyler's radio suddenly crackled with an incoming transmission, but it wasn't from the National Guard frequency. Instead, a gravelly voice emerged from the speaker, speaking in broken sentences that sent chills down their spines. Inside, we know, inside, come out, easier, less pain, come out now. The infected had somehow accessed their communication frequency, either through retained knowledge of radio operation or by pure chance. The realization that they could be monitored by their hunters added another layer of terror to their already desperate situation. David made quick hand signals to Marcus, military communication that the construction foreman had learned during their weeks together. They needed to create a diversion, something to draw the hunters away from the building long enough for them to escape through a route the infected hadn't anticipated. The Marine pointed to the store's emergency exit, a narrow passage that led to an adjacent alley, but reaching it would require moving through the main floor where they would be visible through multiple windows. It was a calculated risk that could either save their lives or seal their doom. The crash of splintering wood echoed through the hardware store as the infected police officer's shoulder connected with the front door, sending vibrations through the entire building. Marcus knew they had seconds before the barricade gave way completely, and he made the decision that would define their survival. They would fight their way out rather than wait to be cornered like trapped animals. He grabbed the heavy sledgehammer from the tool rack behind him, its familiar weight bringing back memories of construction sites where precision and timing meant the difference between success and catastrophe. Now, those same principles would determine whether they lived or died. David moved with the fluid efficiency of his military training, shouldering his rifle and drawing the combat knife strapped to his belt. The Marine had learned in overseas deployments that close-quarters combat often came down to split-second decisions and absolute commitment to action. He positioned himself near the emergency exit, ready to clear their escape route while providing covering fire for the others. His mind automatically calculated angles, distances, and potential complications, the tactical analysis happening beneath conscious thought as years of training took control. The sound of the infected officers' renewed assault on the front door served as their countdown timer. They had perhaps 30 seconds before the hunters breached their sanctuary. Jessica secured Emma in the improvised baby carrier she had fashioned from torn fabric and backpack straps, the infant now fully awake but miraculously quiet, as if sensing the life-or-death nature of their situation. The nurse's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she gathered their medical supplies, antibiotics, bandages, and the precious insulin that Tyler needed for his diabetes, a condition that had become a daily challenge in a world where pharmacies were overrun graveyards. She had watched too many people die from treatable conditions simply because medical resources were no longer available, and she refused to let any of her companions suffer the same fate. Tyler stuffed the portable radio into his backpack along with the spare batteries and signal amplifier he had cobbled together from salvaged electronics. The teenagers' technical modifications had given them their first real hope of reaching other survivors, but now those same modifications might be the key to their escape. He had been working on a proximity alarm system using motion sensors from the store's security equipment, and while it wasn't complete, it might provide enough warning to help them avoid the hunting packs that roamed the city streets. His young hands shook with adrenaline, but his mind remained focused on the problem-solving skills that had kept them alive this long. The front barricade exploded inward as the infected officer finally broke through, its decaying face twisted into an expression of hunger that retained disturbing traces of human intelligence. Behind it came the construction worker and two other hunters, a nurse whose scrubs were stained with something far worse than hospital antiseptic, and a teenager whose school letterman jacket marked him as one of the enhanced infected that had retained athletic coordination. These weren't the shambling horrors they had grown accustomed to avoiding, these were predators that moved with purpose and deadly efficiency. Marcus swung the sledgehammer in a wide arc, catching the infected officer center mass and sending it crashing into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete blocks. The construction foreman's experience with heavy tools translated seamlessly into combat effectiveness, each swing calculated for maximum impact and minimal energy expenditure. But even as the first hunter went down, he could see more shadows moving outside the shattered doorway, and he realized they were facing not just a pack but an entire hunting party that had been tracking them for hours. David's rifle spoke twice in rapid succession, precise headshots that dropped the infected construction worker and nurse before they could fully enter the store. The Marine's marksmanship was flawless, but he knew that gunfire would attract every infected creature within a mile radius. They had perhaps minutes before the sound brought reinforcements that would make their current situation look manageable. He kicked open the emergency exit and immediately found himself face to face with two more hunters who had been waiting in the alley, their retained tactical awareness allowing them to anticipate the survivor's most likely escape route. Jessica pressed against the back wall, shielding Emma with her body as the infected letterman rushed toward them with the speed and coordination of someone who had once been a star athlete. The nurse grabbed a crowbar from the tool display and met the creature's charge with desperate fury, her medical training providing knowledge of human anatomy that she now used for destruction rather than healing. The irony was not lost on her. She was using her understanding of the human body to fight creatures that were no longer human, applying her knowledge of pressure points and vulnerable areas to protect the life growing in her arms. Tyler activated the motion sensors he had been working on, and immediately the makeshift alarm system began beeping frantically as it detected the multiple hunters converging on their location. The teenagers' electronics expertise had given them early warning, but it also confirmed their worst fears. They were surrounded by at least a dozen intelligent infected, all working together with a level of coordination that suggested they had been planning this ambush for some time. His radio crackled with more of the broken communications from the hunting party: trapped, nowhere, run, feed soon. The battle became a desperate dance of survival as the four companions fought side by side against overwhelming odds. Marcus wielded his sledgehammer like a medieval warrior, each strike accompanied by the sickening sound of impact against decaying flesh and brittle bone. David moved through the combat zone with military precision, conserving ammunition while maximizing effectiveness, his knife work silent and deadly as he cleared their path to freedom. Jessica fought with the fierce protectiveness of a mother defending her child, her medical knowledge transformed into intimate understanding of how to disable their attackers most efficiently. But for every hunter they brought down, more seemed to take its place, and Tyler's motion sensors indicated that the sound of combat was drawing additional infected from throughout the neighborhood. The teenager realized that their electronic equipment, while providing tactical advantages, was also broadcasting their location to every creature capable of tracking electromagnetic signatures. He made the difficult decision to shut down all their devices, plunging them into electronic silence just as they needed communication most desperately. As they fought their way toward the alley exit, Marcus caught sight of something that filled him with both hope and terror: military vehicles moving through the distant streets, their headlights cutting through the morning gloom like beacons of salvation. Captain Rodriguez's forces were conducting rescue operations, but they were still blocks away, and the survivors would have to navigate through infected-controlled territory to reach them. The construction foreman made split-second calculations about distance, time, and the growing horde of hunters that seemed to materialize from every shadow and doorway. The infected police officer, despite Marcus's devastating sledgehammer blow, began pulling itself across the floor with single-minded determination, its spine clearly broken but its hunger undiminished. This creature represented everything terrifying about the New World: death that refused to stay dead, intelligence corrupted by insatiable appetite, and the horrifying realization that the infection didn't just kill its victims but transformed them into something far worse than mere corpses. Jessica kicked the creature's reaching hands away from Emma's carrier, her nurse's compassion completely overwhelmed by maternal instinct and survival necessity. The acrid smoke from David's road flares created a temporary barrier between the survivors and the hunting party, but Marcus knew their advantage would last only minutes before the intelligent infected adapted to the new threat. The construction foreman led their desperate sprint through the alley, his work boots splashing through puddles of stagnant rainwater that reflected the chaotic red glow of the burning flares. Behind them, he could hear the hunters regrouping, their guttural communications becoming more agitated as they realized their prey was escaping. The military vehicles he had glimpsed were moving systematically through the city blocks, but they were still at least 6 blocks away, and every step between their current position and salvation was controlled by creatures that had learned to hunt humans with terrifying efficiency. Jessica clutched Emma's carrier against her chest as she ran, her nurse's training in emergency medicine having never prepared her for fleeing through a post-apocalyptic urban wasteland while protecting an infant. The baby remained remarkably calm, perhaps sensing that silence meant survival in this new world where the smallest sound could attract deadly attention. Jessica's medical bag bounced against her hip with each stride, containing supplies that could mean the difference between life and death if any of them were injured during their escape. She had learned to treat wounds with whatever materials were available, from torn clothing to hardware store antiseptic, and her skills had already saved Tyler's life twice when his diabetes had threatened to overwhelm his system without proper medication. Tyler's backpack weighed heavily on his young shoulders, loaded with the electronic equipment that had become their lifeline to the outside world. The teenager's technical expertise had evolved from fixing video game consoles to jerry-rigging survival equipment from salvaged parts. His motion sensors had given them crucial warning about the hunting party, but now he realized that their electronic signatures might be attracting the intelligent infected who retained enough knowledge to recognize the electromagnetic patterns of human technology. He made mental notes about shielding their devices better, assuming they survived long enough for such improvements to matter. David moved with tactical precision at the rear of their group, his military training evident in the way he constantly checked their six while maintaining forward momentum. The Marine's rifle was slung across his back, useless in their current situation where stealth mattered more than firepower, but his combat knife remained ready in case they encountered resistance they couldn't avoid. His overseas deployments had taught him that successful evacuations depended on maintaining unit cohesion while adapting to changing threats, and their current situation was essentially an urban combat withdrawal through hostile territory occupied by an enemy that combined human intelligence with inhuman persistence. The alley opened onto a main street that had once been a thriving commercial district but now resembled a war zone where abandoned vehicles created a maze of potential hiding spots for both survivors and predators. Marcus scanned the area quickly, his construction experience helping him identify the safest route through the obstacle course of overturned cars, fallen power lines, and debris from collapsed storefronts. The morning sun was climbing higher, which meant better visibility but also increased risk of being spotted by the roaming packs of infected that seemed to emerge from every shadow and doorway. From somewhere behind them came the sound of glass breaking as the hunting party finally worked its way through the smoke barrier, their coordination evident in the methodical way they spread out to cover multiple escape routes. These weren't the random wanderers that had dominated the early days of the outbreak. These were evolved predators that had learned from their encounters with human survivors, developing tactics that countered the most common defensive strategies. Tyler's radio equipment picked up fragments of their communication, broken words that suggested they were calling for reinforcements from other hunting parties operating throughout the city. Jessica spotted movement in one of the abandoned storefronts and instinctively pulled Emma closer, her maternal instincts hyperactive in an environment where every shadow could conceal mortal danger. The figure in the window turned out to be another survivor, an elderly man who gestured frantically for them to stay quiet before disappearing back into the darkness of his hiding place. The encounter served as a stark reminder that they weren't the only people struggling to stay alive in this transformed world, though most survivors had learned that helping others often meant exposing yourself to deadly risks. David's tactical assessment of their situation was grimly realistic. They were being herded toward the military rescue operation by intelligent infected who understood that concentrated human activity would attract more prey to a single location. The hunters weren't just chasing them, they were using them as bait to draw other survivors into a carefully orchestrated trap. The Marine realized that their escape might be leading directly into an ambush that could compromise Captain Rodriguez's rescue mission and doom dozens of other civilians who were trying to reach the safe zone. The sound of diesel engines grew louder as the military convoy approached their position, but Marcus could also hear other sounds that filled him with dread, the distinctive moaning of regular infected being drawn toward the noise and activity. The rescue operation was creating exactly the kind of disturbance that attracted the wandering hordes, and the intelligent hunters seemed to be counting on this chaos to overwhelm the military's defensive capabilities. The construction foreman realized they were caught between multiple threats: the hunting party behind them, the gathering horde ahead of them, and the risk of leading danger to their potential rescuers. Tyler's electronic equipment suddenly came alive with multiple radio transmissions as they approached the military perimeter. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through the static with urgent warnings: "All civilian evacuees, be advised we have confirmed reports of coordinated infected activity in your area. These are not standard wanderers, repeat, we are dealing with intelligent hostiles using pack hunting tactics. Maintain radio silence until you reach our security perimeter." The teenager realized that his communications had been monitored not just by the hunting party but by the military forces who were tracking the evolution of the infected threat. Jessica's medical training kicked in as she noticed Emma showing signs of dehydration from the stress and physical exertion of their escape. The nurse had learned to recognize the subtle symptoms that could quickly become life-threatening in their current environment, where medical facilities were either destroyed or overrun with infected patients. She had a small supply of electrolyte solution in her medical bag, but administering it while running through hostile territory would require stopping long enough to become vulnerable to attack. The decision represented the kind of impossible choice that defined survival in the post-apocalyptic world: immediate medical needs versus long-term survival strategy. The military vehicles came into view as they rounded a corner, their armored hulls and mounted weapons representing the first organized resistance to the infected threat they had seen in months. But Marcus could also see that Captain Rodriguez's forces were already engaged in combat with a massive horde of regular infected that had been drawn to their location by the noise and activity of the rescue operation. The intelligent hunting party had successfully used their escape to create exactly the kind of chaotic situation where coordinated predators could exploit the confusion to infiltrate the military perimeter. David made rapid hand signals to alert the others about the tactical situation developing around the rescue site, his military experience recognizing the signs of an operation that was about to be overwhelmed by superior numbers. The Marine could see muzzle flashes from the soldiers' weapons as they fought to maintain their defensive perimeter, but the sheer volume of infected converging on their position suggested that the rescue operation might become a last stand rather than a successful evacuation. Their small group would have to time their approach perfectly to avoid being caught in the crossfire between military forces and the infected horde. Marcus made the split-second decision that would define not just their survival but potentially the fate of Captain Rodriguez's entire rescue operation. They would circle around to approach the military perimeter from the opposite direction, buying the soldiers crucial time to deal with the infected horde without adding to their tactical complications. The construction foreman's experience managing complex job sites had taught him that sometimes the best way to help was to solve your own problems independently rather than creating additional burdens for an already overwhelmed team. His weathered hands gestured for the others to follow him into the maze of abandoned vehicles that stretched between collapsed buildings, creating a route that would keep them hidden from both the hunting parties and the massive battle erupting around the rescue site. David immediately understood Marcus's tactical thinking and took point position as they began their circuitous approach, his military training recognizing the wisdom of avoiding a three-way engagement between survivors, hunters, and friendly forces. The Marine's combat experience had shown him that the most dangerous situations were often those where multiple armed groups operated in close proximity without clear communication, leading to friendly fire incidents that claimed as many lives as enemy action. His rifle remained ready as he guided them through the urban obstacle course, but his primary focus was on keeping their small group intact and undetected while the larger battle raged just blocks away. Jessica found herself caught between relief and terror as she administered the electrolyte solution to Emma during a brief pause behind an overturned delivery truck, the infant's improved responsiveness providing hope even as the sound of automatic weapons fire echoed through the morning air. The nurse's medical training had prepared her for mass casualty events, but the reality of treating patients in a combat zone while protecting a newborn exceeded anything her emergency room experience had encompassed. She could hear Captain Rodriguez's voice over Tyler's radio, coordinating defensive positions and calling for ammunition resupply, painting a picture of a military unit under extreme pressure but maintaining professional discipline under fire. Tyler's electronic equipment painted an increasingly complex picture of the battle developing around them, with motion sensors detecting movement patterns that suggested the infected forces were employing sophisticated tactics beyond simple overwhelming numbers. The teenagers' technical analysis revealed that the hunting parties were using coordinated timing to launch simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, preventing the military forces from concentrating their defensive fire effectively. His improvised communication intercepts indicated that the intelligent infected had developed a rudimentary command structure, with certain individuals directing others through a combination of vocal signals and primitive hand gestures that retained fragments of human military knowledge. The revelation that some of the hunters retained military training created a chilling new dimension to their tactical situation, as Marcus realized they were facing infected individuals who had been soldiers, police officers, or security personnel before their transformation. These creatures combined the relentless hunger of the undead with professional combat training, creating adversaries that could anticipate military responses and counter standard defensive strategies. The construction foreman's civilian perspective had always assumed that organized military resistance would eventually contain the outbreak, but witnessing infected forces that could match professional soldiers in tactical sophistication suggested a far more complex and dangerous conflict. As they moved through their concealed route, Jessica spotted something that made her blood run cold: a group of infected children moving with the same coordinated intelligence as the adult hunters, their small size allowing them to navigate through spaces that larger creatures couldn't access. The nurse's maternal instincts warred with tactical necessity as she watched these young predators taking positions that would allow them to attack the military perimeter from unexpected angles. The sight of infected children employing military tactics represented a level of horror that challenged her ability to maintain emotional stability while protecting Emma from a world that had become infinitely more dangerous than she had imagined. David's military communications training allowed him to monitor the radio traffic between Captain Rodriguez's forces and their command structure, revealing that the Belle Isle operation was just one of multiple rescue missions operating throughout the region, all of which were reporting similar coordinated attacks by intelligent infected forces. The Marine realized they were witnessing not just a local tactical situation but a regional campaign by evolved infected forces that suggested a level of organization that exceeded anything in the official intelligence briefings he had received before the outbreak. The implications were staggering. If the infected could coordinate operations across multiple cities, traditional military responses might prove inadequate to contain the threat. Tyler's technical expertise became crucial as he detected electronic signatures that indicated some of the infected were using captured military communication equipment, potentially allowing them to monitor and disrupt human defensive communications. The teenagers' modifications to their own radio equipment included encryption protocols he had developed from gaming security systems, providing them with communication capabilities that might be secure from infected interception. His discovery that the hunters were conducting electronic warfare elevated the conflict from a simple survival situation to a technological arms race between human ingenuity and infected adaptation. The sound of helicopters approaching from the east provided the first sign that Captain Rodriguez's forces were receiving reinforcements, but Marcus could also see infected forces repositioning to counter the new threat, their tactical adaptation happening in real time as they responded to changing battlefield conditions. The construction foreman's project management experience had taught him to recognize when complex operations were reaching critical decision points, and he could sense that the next few minutes would determine whether the rescue mission succeeded or became a catastrophic failure that would doom every civilian trapped in the city. Jessica's medical assessment of their situation became increasingly urgent as she recognized signs of combat stress in all of her companions, the psychological strain of witnessing organized infected forces challenging their fundamental assumptions about the nature of their enemy. The nurse had seen similar reactions in hospital staff during the early days of the outbreak, when medical professionals struggled to accept that their patients were becoming predators rather than victims. Her training in crisis psychology became as important as her medical skills in keeping their small group functioning effectively under extreme stress. David made the tactical decision to attempt radio contact with Captain Rodriguez's forces, using Tyler's encrypted communication system to provide intelligence about the infected forces' coordination and tactical capabilities without revealing their own location or compromising the rescue operation. The Marines' military communication protocols emphasized actionable intelligence over personal requests for assistance, recognizing that their survival depended on the overall success of the rescue mission rather than individual extraction. His transmission was brief and professional. Unknown station, this is Yankee 77. Advised infected forces demonstrate coordinated tactics, electronic warfare capabilities, and military-trained leadership. Recommend enhanced security protocols and counterintelligence measures. Will continue independent approach to your location. As Captain Rodriguez's voice acknowledged their transmission with gratitude for the intelligence update, Marcus felt a surge of hope that their desperate escape might contribute to something larger than personal survival. They were providing crucial information that could help human forces adapt their tactics to counter the evolved infected threat. The construction foreman realized that their journey from the hardware store had transformed them from desperate refugees into active participants in humanity's fight for survival, carrying knowledge and skills that could make the difference between victory and extinction in the war that was reshaping their world. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through Tyler's encrypted radio with urgent precision that cut through the chaos of battle. Yankee 77, your intelligence confirmed by air reconnaissance. Infected forces demonstrating unprecedented coordination across 17-block radius. We are implementing your recommendations for enhanced perimeter security, but we need eyes on their command structure. Can you provide overwatch on infected leadership positions? The request transformed their mission from escape to active reconnaissance, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility as he realized their civilian group possessed tactical knowledge that could determine the outcome of humanity's first organized counteroffensive against the evolved infected threat. David's military training kicked into high gear as he accepted the Overwatch mission, his sniper experience from overseas deployments providing him with the skills necessary to identify and track high-value targets among the infected forces. The Marine positioned himself at a vantage point in a partially collapsed office building, using his rifle scope to scan the battlefield for signs of the command structure that was coordinating the infected assault. What he saw through the magnified optics defied everything he thought he knew about the outbreak. A former military officer, still wearing the remnants of his uniform, was directing infected forces through hand signals while maintaining a defensive position that demonstrated professional tactical awareness. Jessica found herself in the unprecedented position of providing medical intelligence about enemy forces, her nursing background allowing her to assess the physical condition and capabilities of the infected leadership through David's scope observations. The nurse could identify which infected individuals retained the fine motor skills necessary for complex coordination, distinguishing between those who were merely following orders and those who possessed the cognitive function required for strategic planning. Her medical analysis revealed that the infected command structure appeared to be composed entirely of individuals who had been in peak physical condition at the time of their transformation, suggesting that the virus preserved higher brain function more effectively in healthy hosts. Tyler's technical expertise became crucial as he intercepted and decoded the electronic communications that were coordinating the infected assault, his gaming background in cryptography and signal analysis providing insights that traditional military intelligence might have missed. The teenager discovered that the infected forces were using a combination of captured military radios and improvised communication devices constructed from civilian electronics, creating a hybrid network that was surprisingly resilient to conventional jamming techniques. His analysis revealed communication patterns that suggested the infected leadership was receiving orders from a higher command authority located somewhere beyond the immediate battlefield. The revelation that the infected forces operated under a hierarchical command structure sent chills through Marcus as he realized the implications for human survival strategies that had been based on assumptions about mindless, disorganized threats. The construction foreman's project management experience had taught him to recognize efficient organizational systems, and the infected forces demonstrated coordination that matched or exceeded many human military operations he had witnessed. Their enemy wasn't just intelligent, it was organized, disciplined, and apparently receiving strategic direction from leaders who possessed military-grade tactical knowledge. As David continued his reconnaissance through the rifle scope, he spotted something that made his blood run cold. Infected forces were using human shields, positioning captured civilians between themselves and the military perimeter to prevent effective defensive fire. The Marines' military rules of engagement had never prepared him for an enemy that could exploit humanitarian considerations as tactical advantages, and he found himself facing impossible decisions about target selection in situations where any shot could endanger innocent lives. The infected leadership's use of psychological warfare demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that elevated the conflict beyond simple survival into complex moral territory. Jessica's medical training allowed her to recognize signs of recent infection in some of the human shields, individuals who appeared to be in the early stages of transformation but retained enough human appearance to serve as effective cover for infected operations. The nurse realized that the infected forces were using a deliberate infection strategy, creating human shields who would transform into additional combatants over time while serving immediate tactical purposes. Her medical assessment suggested that the infected leadership understood the progression of their own virus well enough to time battlefield conversions for maximum strategic impact. Tyler's electronic surveillance detected communication traffic that indicated the infected assault on Captain Rodriguez's position was actually a diversionary attack designed to draw human military resources away from other objectives throughout the city. The teenager's analysis of signal patterns and timing revealed that coordinated infected forces were simultaneously attacking multiple strategic locations, including power plants, communication centers, and supply depots that were critical to human survival infrastructure. Their small group had stumbled into reconnaissance of a comprehensive military campaign rather than a simple attempt to overrun a rescue operation. David's tactical assessment of the battlefield situation became increasingly grave as he realized that Captain Rodriguez's forces were facing a carefully planned operation designed to appear desperate while actually serving strategic objectives that extended far beyond the immediate engagement. The Marines' combat experience recognized the hallmarks of a professional military deception operation, complete with feints, diversions, and coordinated timing that required extensive planning and sophisticated communication networks. The infected forces weren't just attacking, they were executing a complex battle plan that demonstrated strategic thinking at the operational level. Marcus coordinated their intelligence gathering with growing appreciation for the skills each member of their group brought to the reconnaissance mission, their diverse backgrounds providing analytical capabilities that were proving crucial to understanding the true nature of the threat they were facing. The construction foreman realized that their accidental transformation from refugees to intelligence assets represented exactly the kind of adaptive thinking that human forces would need to counter an enemy that was evolving faster than anyone had anticipated. Their survival depended not just on reaching safety but on ensuring that the knowledge they were gathering reached human leadership before it was too late. Jessica's medical assessment of the infected forces revealed physiological changes that suggested the virus was continuing to evolve, with newer infections showing enhanced coordination and reduced physical deterioration compared to the early cases she had witnessed in the hospital. The nurse's observations indicated that the infected population was becoming more effective over time, adapting not just behaviorally but biologically to their role as humanity's primary predator. Her medical intelligence painted a picture of an enemy that was literally evolving in real time to become more dangerous with each passing day. Tyler's technical analysis uncovered evidence that the infected forces were learning from their encounters with human military tactics, adapting their strategies based on detailed observation of defensive responses and communication patterns. The teenager's electronic intelligence suggested that the infected leadership possessed not just retained military knowledge but active learning capabilities that allowed them to counter human tactical innovations almost as quickly as they were developed. Their enemy wasn't just organized and intelligent, it was adaptive in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about biological limitations. David made the critical decision to expand their reconnaissance beyond simple observation to active intelligence gathering, using his military training to identify specific infected leaders whose elimination might disrupt the coordinated assault on human positions throughout the city. The Marines' tactical analysis indicated that the infected command structure relied on individual leaders whose loss could create cascading failures in their organizational system. His recommendation to Captain Rodriguez was both simple and terrifying. Human forces would need to conduct targeted assassination operations against intelligent infected leaders to prevent them from coordinating larger strategic campaigns that could overwhelm organized resistance. David's scope crosshairs aligned perfectly with the infected military officer who was coordinating the assault on Captain Rodriguez's forces, but the Marine's finger hesitated on the trigger as he realized that eliminating this target would require firing through a group of human shields that included at least 3 children. The moral complexity of the shot represented everything that made fighting intelligent infected forces different from conventional warfare. The enemy understood human psychological limitations and exploited them with calculated cruelty that transcended simple hunger or aggression. His military training had prepared him for difficult tactical decisions, but nothing in his experience had anticipated an enemy that could weaponize human compassion against organized resistance efforts. Marcus coordinated their intelligence gathering with increasing urgency as Tyler's electronic surveillance revealed that infected forces throughout the city were preparing to launch their primary assault, using the diversionary attack on the rescue operation as cover for a coordinated strike against the last remaining human strongholds. The construction foreman's project management skills translated seamlessly into tactical coordination as he balanced David's reconnaissance, Jessica's medical analysis, and Tyler's technical intelligence to create a comprehensive picture of the infected threat. Their small group had accidentally become the most informed intelligence unit in the region, possessing critical knowledge that could determine the outcome of humanity's first organized counteroffensive against the evolved infected menace. Jessica's medical observation of the human shields revealed a horrifying tactical innovation. The infected forces were using individuals in different stages of transformation, creating a spectrum from fully human to completely infected that made target identification nearly impossible for human forces operating under humanitarian rules of engagement. The nurse's analysis indicated that the infected leadership understood the progression of their own virus well enough to orchestrate battlefield conversions that would provide immediate tactical advantages while destroying the morale of human defenders forced to watch civilians transform into enemies in real time. Her medical intelligence painted a picture of an enemy that had weaponized the infection process itself as a psychological warfare tool. Tyler's technical breakthrough came when he successfully hacked into the infected communication network, discovering that their enemy's electronic warfare capabilities were built around equipment and knowledge stolen from human military installations that had been overrun in the early days of the outbreak. The teenager's analysis revealed that the infected forces possessed not just captured human technology but detailed intelligence about human defensive strategies, communication protocols, and organizational vulnerabilities that they were exploiting with devastating effectiveness. His electronic intelligence uncovered a chilling reality: the infected leadership knew more about human military capabilities than most human commanders knew about infected tactical innovations. The scope of the infected strategic campaign became clear as David's reconnaissance identified staging areas where hundreds of infected forces were massing for coordinated assaults on multiple targets, their movements demonstrating military discipline that exceeded many human operations he had witnessed during his overseas deployments. The Marines' tactical analysis revealed that the infected forces were operating under a unified command structure that spanned the entire metropolitan area, coordinating operations that would simultaneously eliminate human leadership, destroy critical infrastructure, and capture strategic resources necessary for long-term survival. Their enemy wasn't just intelligent and organized, it was conducting a comprehensive military campaign designed to eliminate human resistance permanently. Marcus made the command decision that would define their contribution to the battle for human survival. They would abandon their own safety to conduct a direct assault on the infected command post, using their unique intelligence about enemy capabilities to eliminate the leadership coordinating the citywide offensive. The construction foreman's leadership experience had taught him to recognize situations where individual sacrifice could achieve objectives that benefited the larger group, and their current tactical position provided an opportunity to disrupt infected operations that might never come again. His decision transformed them from intelligence observers to active combatants in a mission that would require every skill they possessed. David's military assessment of their assault plan was grimly realistic about their chances of survival, but his tactical analysis confirmed that eliminating the infected command structure could create enough chaos to allow Captain Rodriguez's forces to break through the coordinated assault and establish communications with other human resistance groups. The Marine sniper training provided the precision necessary to target infected leaders, while his infantry experience would guide their approach to the heavily defended command post. His military expertise had become the foundation for an operation that could change the course of the war, assuming they survived long enough to execute it successfully. Jessica's medical knowledge became crucial as she prepared emergency treatment protocols for the injuries they would inevitably sustain during their assault on the infected command position, her nursing skills providing the only chance of keeping them functional long enough to complete their mission. The nurses' combat medical training, acquired during their months of survival, had evolved far beyond her hospital experience to encompass battlefield medicine under conditions that would have been unimaginable before the outbreak. Her medical expertise represented their margin of survival in an operation where wounds could mean death not just from blood loss but from infection by an enemy that turned injury into transformation. Tyler's technical skills became the key to their assault plan as he prepared electronic warfare countermeasures designed to disrupt infected communications at the moment of maximum tactical impact, preventing enemy forces from coordinating their response to the leadership assassination attempt. The teenager's expertise in signal jamming and communication disruption had evolved from gaming pranks into military-grade electronic warfare capabilities that could provide the crucial seconds necessary for their assault to succeed. His technical innovation represented the cutting edge of human adaptation to the evolved infected threat, using knowledge and skills that hadn't existed before the outbreak began. The moment of decision arrived as David confirmed that the infected military commander was preparing to coordinate the final assault on human positions throughout the city, his tactical communications indicating that hundreds of human civilians trapped in various locations would be overrun within minutes unless the command structure was disrupted immediately. Marcus's leadership brought their diverse skills into perfect coordination as Jessica prepared medical support, Tyler activated his electronic countermeasures, and David aligned his rifle for the shot that would begin their desperate assault on the enemy command post. Their transformation from desperate survivors to active combatants was complete, driven by the realization that their unique combination of skills might represent humanity's best chance for survival. The infected commander's voice echoed through captured military radio equipment as he coordinated the final phase of the assault. All units, initiate termination protocols. Eliminate all human resistance within designated sectors. Priority targets are communication centers, medical facilities, and civilian gathering points. Show no quarter, the age of human dominance ends today. His words confirmed their worst fears about the organized nature of the infected threat while providing final motivation for their desperate mission to disrupt the coordinated assault that threatened to eliminate human resistance permanently. David's finger tightened on the trigger as he prepared to take the shot that would either save countless human lives or doom their small group to immediate retaliation from the infected forces surrounding the command post. The Marine's crosshairs remained steady despite the moral complexity of firing through human shields, his military discipline overcoming humanitarian instincts in recognition of the greater tactical necessity. Marcus, Jessica, and Tyler prepared for the coordinated assault that would follow the sniper shot, their individual skills merged into a collective capability that represented everything human ingenuity and determination could achieve against impossible odds. David's rifle spoke with precision that cut through the chaos of battle, the single shot finding its target despite the moral complexity of the human shields, as the Marines' military training overcame humanitarian instincts in recognition that saving the few civilians around the infected commander meant sacrificing thousands of others throughout the city. The infected military leaders had snapped back as the high-velocity round found its mark, and immediately the coordinated communications directing the assault began fragmenting into confused chatter as subordinate commanders struggled to maintain tactical cohesion without their strategic leader. Tyler's electronic countermeasures activated simultaneously, flooding the infected communication network with jamming signals that turned organized military coordination into chaotic noise, buying precious seconds for their assault on the command post. Marcus led the charge down from their observation position with the fury of someone who had watched civilization crumble while building the determination to fight back, his sledgehammer becoming an instrument of liberation as he carved through infected guards who were still reeling from the sudden loss of their command structure. The construction foreman's leadership had evolved from managing work crews to coordinating life-or-death tactical operations, and his ability to maintain focus under extreme pressure kept their small assault team functioning as infected forces began converging on their position from multiple directions. His construction site experience with dangerous environments translated seamlessly into combat effectiveness as he created a path through enemy defenses toward their ultimate objective. Jessica fought with the protective fury of a mother defending not just her own child but every human child still alive in the city. Her medical knowledge of anatomy transformed into devastating combat effectiveness as she targeted vulnerable points on infected attackers with surgical precision. The nurse's understanding of human physiology had become weaponized through months of survival, allowing her to disable infected opponents with efficiency that conserved energy while maximizing tactical impact. Emma remained secure in her carrier, protected by her mother's fierce determination to ensure that the next generation would inherit a world where humanity had fought back successfully against the evolved infected threat. Tyler's technical expertise became crucial as he seized control of the infected communication equipment, using his hacking skills to broadcast Captain Rodriguez's coordinates and tactical situation to every surviving human resistance group within radio range, transforming their desperate assault into a catalyst for coordinated counteroffensive operations throughout the region. The teenager's electronic warfare capabilities had evolved from gaming skills into military-grade communication disruption that turned the enemy's own technology against them. His real-time intelligence broadcasts provided human forces with the tactical awareness necessary to exploit the chaos created by the command structure's elimination. The infected forces' coordination collapsed as David's sniper shot and Tyler's electronic warfare created cascading failures throughout their organizational system, proving that their evolved intelligence carried inherent vulnerabilities that could be exploited by human tactical innovation and courage under fire. Marcus watched with grim satisfaction as infected units began operating independently rather than as coordinated tactical elements, their military effectiveness degrading rapidly without the leadership structure that had made them so dangerous. The construction foreman's project management instincts recognized the signs of organizational collapse that would provide human forces with crucial opportunities to regain tactical initiative. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the captured communication equipment with professional admiration and tactical urgency. Yankee 7-7, outstanding work on command disruption. Infected coordination failing across all sectors. We are exploiting the chaos to establish communication with resistance groups citywide. Your intelligence and direct action have given us the opening we needed to turn this battle around. The military commander's acknowledgement transformed their desperate assault from a suicide mission into a successful tactical operation that had achieved strategic objectives beyond their most optimistic hopes. David's military assessment of the battlefield situation revealed that their elimination of the infected command structure had created opportunities for human forces to execute coordinated counterattacks that were driving infected units back from strategic positions throughout the city. The Marines' tactical analysis indicated that the infected forces' reliance on centralized command had been both their greatest strength and their critical vulnerability, a lesson that would inform future human defensive strategies against evolved infected threats. His sniper skills had proven that precision targeting of enemy leadership could achieve tactical results far exceeding the simple elimination of individual threats. Jessica's medical knowledge became crucial as she treated wounded civilians who had been used as human shields, her nursing skills providing immediate care that saved lives while demonstrating that human compassion remained a strength rather than a vulnerability in the war against the infected threat. The nurse's ability to preserve human life in the midst of combat represented everything that distinguished human resistance from infected aggression, providing moral clarity in a conflict that had tested every ethical assumption about warfare and survival. Her medical expertise had become a symbol of humanity's determination to maintain its values even while fighting for its existence. Tyler's electronic intelligence revealed that their successful assault on the command post had triggered communication failures among infected forces across the entire metropolitan area, suggesting that the evolved infected threat operated through hierarchical networks that could be disrupted through targeted action against key nodes. The teenager's technical analysis provided crucial insights for future operations against organized infected forces, demonstrating that human technological innovation could counter biological adaptation through strategic application of electronic warfare capabilities. His skills had evolved from entertainment to military significance in ways that represented humanity's capacity for creative adaptation under extreme pressure. Marcus coordinated their extraction from the command post with the same leadership skills that had kept them alive throughout their journey from desperate refugees to successful military operatives, his construction management experience providing the organizational capabilities necessary to maintain unit cohesion while under fire from converging infected forces. The construction foreman's transformation from civilian survivor to tactical leader represented the kind of adaptation that would be necessary for human civilization to survive and eventually thrive in a world where the infected threat had evolved beyond simple mindless hunger into organized military opposition. Captain Rodriguez's forces successfully exploited the chaos created by their assault to establish secure perimeters around multiple civilian gathering points throughout the city, the rescue operation expanding from a single extraction point to a comprehensive evacuation network that saved thousands of lives. The military commander's tactical reports indicated that human resistance groups were using the intelligence provided by their small team to coordinate counteroffensive operations that were systematically dismantling infected strongholds across the region. Their desperate mission had catalyzed the first successful human counterattack since the outbreak began. David's post-action analysis confirmed that targeted elimination of infected leadership could effectively neutralize the coordination that made evolved infected forces so dangerous, providing a tactical template for future operations against organized infected threats in other regions. The Marines' military expertise had proven that conventional warfare principles remained effective against evolved infected forces, assuming human commanders understood the nature of their enemy's organizational structures and tactical capabilities. His sniper skills had become the foundation for specialized anti-infected warfare doctrine that would inform military operations throughout the remaining conflict. As the 4 survivors were successfully extracted by Captain Rodriguez's forces and transported to the secure zone on Belle Isle, they carried with them not just their own survival but the knowledge and experience that would help humanity develop effective strategies for countering the evolved infected threat. Marcus's leadership, David's military expertise, Jessica's medical knowledge, and Tyler's technical innovation had combined to create capabilities that transformed them from desperate refugees into the architects of human victory in the first major engagement of the war for civilization survival. Jessica held Emma close as they watched the sun set over a city where human forces were systematically reclaiming territory from infected control, the nurse's determination to protect her daughter having evolved into successful contribution to protecting all of humanity's children from a threat that had seemed insurmountable. The infant who had been born into a world dominated by evolved infected forces would grow up knowing that ordinary people could become extraordinary heroes when faced with impossible challenges, and that human ingenuity, courage, and cooperation could overcome even the most terrifying evolutionary adaptations. Their story became the foundation for human resistance doctrine that would be implemented across the country as military forces learned to counter organized infected threats through targeted leadership elimination, electronic warfare, and coordinated tactical operations that exploited the vulnerabilities inherent in hierarchical command structures. The 4 ordinary survivors who had accidentally discovered extraordinary capabilities would be remembered not just for their individual courage but for proving that human civilization possessed the adaptive capacity necessary to survive and ultimately triumph over any evolutionary threat that challenged the species' right to inherit the Earth.